Welcome back, Fanta-Sci fans. Thank you for joining me for this next episode of Fanta-Sci. As I was brainstorming, trying to figure out what I wanted to do for this episode, I thought it might be fun to go over my top 5 favorite book series. As I'm getting out all of my books and whatnot, I see all of my books and I get really excited. There's things that I forgot about, and these things make me just like super happy because I'm a humongous nerd. Okay, so coming in at number 5, I have Dan Brown's Robert Langdon series. I think maybe some people saw this coming. It's one of the most popular series I think that's ever been written in the history of books. Dan Brown wrote these books based on a character named Robert Langdon, who is a symbologist. He goes around and I don't know how he's always getting into these tangles with terrorists that like symbolism as much as him. But I think when we're a lover of fantasy, we learn to overlook these gaps in the storyline. So he started out with Angels and Demons, which is just, this book blew my mind. It was written in 2000. I don't think a book really has ever lived up to the amount of intellectualism that he produced in this book. The love of art that this man has is just spectacular. He made me want to go to Vatican City. He made me want to learn about all the art and all the symbology behind the things that he's talking about. And at the same time, he created just a fantastic whirlwind of action, mystery, just an incredible, incredible story. If you haven't read Angels and Demons, he went on from there to write Da Vinci Code, The Lost Symbol, Inferno, Origins. Although Origins, I liked it. It was the weakest of the series so far. The rest of them were just incredible works of art. Okay, so coming in at number 4, I have Stieg Larsson's Millennium series. Stieg Larsson actually only wrote the first 3 books. He then passed away, and this man, what the hell is his name? David Langerkrantz. He picked up the series and he wrote 2 more books in the series. I'm not saying these books are bad. They're entertaining, but the first 3 books, when Stieg Larsson was alive and thriving, they were incredible, just incredible books. So the first one, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I'm sure most of you have heard of this book at least, begins, introducing the character, our protagonist, Lisbeth Salander, who to me ends up being one of the most amazing lead characters in a story. Not only because I can't even call her a protagonist, like she's kind of both a protagonist and an antagonist. She's good and bad, and you end up just loving her so much by the end of the series because she's such a badass and she's got so much going on. There's so much underlying psychological work going on in these books. It goes from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, where there's a kind of a very formatted storyline, to, as the series continues, you never think that, the second book is going to be better than the first book, and then you never think that the third book is going to be better than the second book, and it just keeps getting better and better, and it completely sucked me in. Now, the setting of the story is actually in Sweden, in Stockholm. By the end of this series, we'll say the first 3 books, the third book is The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. By the end of the third book, I felt like I could go to Stockholm and literally walk the streets of Stockholm and know exactly where everything was. Funny story. When I was reading these books, now again, remember that I am a gigantic nerd. In this story, they're kind of running from place to place and there's a lot of action going on. They're chasing people. And I really just wanted to see how accurate Stieg Larsson wrote the actual geography of the city of Stockholm. So I rented a map of Stockholm. And, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm probably the only nerd in the entire universe who would want to actually know these things. Well, guess what, people? I'm not. Because I found these used copies in the used bookstore by my house, and they have a map inside the front cover, which I thought was just absolutely hilarious. Here's the second one, Stockholm District. How hilarious is that? So I am not the only nerd in the world that wanted to know more about Stockholm as we were reading these books. Anyways, Lisbeth Salander, she's freaking awesome. The Swedish movie adaptations were fantastic. They really only did the American version of the first movie, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and it was good. And then now I've heard rumors that they're jumping right into the 4th one, The Girl in the Spider's Web, and I can't understand why they would skip the book 2 and 3, because phenomenal story. So going into number 3, I'm actually really sad because I don't have the 5th book in this series. I actually went around looking for it today, used book hunting and library stops and whatnot, and I couldn't find it. And I'm really sad. Coming in at number 3 is Game of Thrones, the Game of Thrones series, the Song of Ice and Fire. Any fantasy fan, I'm sure, has at least made an attempt to purchase these books and read them. One downfall to the series is it is very, very long. Okay, these books are humongous, but George R.R. Martin is my favorite fantasy writer. He is able to create a whole entire new world on a new continent with new rules of habitat and weather patterns. There's lots of fighting, and then at the same time there's lots of magic and there's lots of mysticism going on. There's everything in these books that a fantasy fan could ever want. George R.R. Martin is kind of on my shit list at the moment because there's supposed to be 2 more books coming out to conclude the series. And the book that I don't have, A Dance with Dragons, which was the 5th book, was written in 2011. And if you haven't noticed, George, it's now 2018 and you still don't even have a release date for when the next book is coming out. And it's just, you're killing me here. So if you ever watch this video, get your shit together. Anyways, by the time you're done reading the series, Song of Ice and Fire, you are completely aware inside your head where everything is in the world of Westeros. You know that if so-and-so has to march from Winterfell to King's Landing, you know how far that is, how long it's going to take, what the weather's going to be like when they get there, what kind of landmarks they're going to have to pass, probably what kind of troubles they're going to have on the road. You know so much because of the way he's written these books, and I've just never experienced anything like it. I promise you, even though these books are very intimidating and they're big and they're long, you will not regret a single second of it. Also, side note, the show Game of Thrones, to me, one of the best shows that's ever been on television. The adaptation is fantastic. I wouldn't say that it's exactly like the books. I would say maybe the first 3 books correspond pretty well with the show. But then, HBO didn't have a choice but to kind of go off on their own kind of direction with the show because Mr. George over here stopped releasing the books. So from what I understand, he kind of gave them a vague idea of, where everything is going to end up so that they could kind of go in their own direction with it. But I love the fact that by the end of the show and by the time he releases the books, we're going to get 2 versions of Game of Thrones. Like, that's how much I love Game of Thrones. Okay, so coming in at number 2, we have probably one of the most beloved stories, maybe the most beloved stories that has ever been written, and it is by J.K. Rowling, and the series is Harry Potter. I am the person that if you tell me that you're picking up Harry Potter for the first time and you've never read it or seen any of the movies, I'm literally jealous. Because reading Harry Potter for the first time was one of the most magical things that I've ever been through. I say magical, not because the books are about magic, I say because of the way that I felt inside my heart while I was reading Harry Potter. I have my little friend Dobby here because he's like one of my favorite pop dolls that I have. He's just so cute. Dobby is the freaking best. Okay. I have the Sorcerer's Stone in the graphic novel format. I got this when this was the only one that was out. Now they have graphic novels for all 7 books. Oh gosh, where do I even start with Harry Potter? Harry Potter blows my mind because of the way J.K. Rowling wrote them. I mean, you start at the beginning and you have no idea what's going on. You don't know anything about the wizarding world, and neither does your protagonist, Harry Potter. So you get to kind of learn with him as he goes from being completely clueless to the fact that he's even a wizard to, everything that he has to go throughout the series. It's just wonderful to be able to learn with him and go with him every step of the way. And I believe that the way that J.K. Rowling wrote this series is just complete and utter brilliance. My personal favorite Harry Potter book is The Goblet of Fire, because The Goblet of Fire has the most ridiculous magic, as he's having to go through the Triwizard Tournament and he's having to kind of show off his wizarding skills a little bit. So to me, The Goblet of Fire is the best book. I also love the movie, but as far as the movies are concerned, I think the finale, The Deathly Hallows Part 2, is probably my favorite movie of them. Although in both the book form and the movie form, I do love the Sorcerer's Stone. You have to love the beginning. You have to love Harry finding out that he is a wizard and going with Hagrid and going to Hogwarts for the first time. Just like the magic behind that story is hard to beat. It really is. So for those of you who have not read Harry Potter, I mean, there's just nothing better. I mean, I have goosebumps talking about this right now. Harry Potter is just fantastic. I can't wait until my 6-year-old is able to sit down and read an actual chapter book, because I'm so excited for the day that she gets to pick up the Sorcerer's Stone and read it for the first time. All right, so we have counted down and are all the way down to number 1 on my list. And don't think that I'm not aware that people are about to get real judgy, because I know that in the universe of fantasy, and as far as these things are concerned, there is either a love, absolutely can't even believe my life amount of love for Twilight, or there's the people on the other spectrum that just absolutely hate it and think it's just a complete monstrosity of literature and filmmaking. For those of you in this latter category, I feel sorry for you. Twilight holds a special place in my heart. I've never felt feelings the way that I felt when I was reading Twilight for the first time. The first book, Twilight, was written in 2006, and it came out, and I was hooked from the first second that I read it. I was desperate for the next books to come out. I remember I was in college, and I was home for the summer, and I was reading New Moon when it came out, right? And I had like a summer job, and I was home with my folks after my, I believe, sophomore year in college, and Edward left. And I just couldn't even believe that they would do this to me. I was reading and reading frantically, knowing that, you know, eventually her and Edward are obviously going to get back together. I had to stop at like 5 o'clock because I had to go to work. I was working at this restaurant at the time. I just go outside and I'm putting my shoes on, and my mom looks at me and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not okay. Edward left Bella, and I don't know when he's coming back, and I just can't even deal with my life right now." This book like really affected me. Okay, like Twilight made me extremely happy. New Moon made me extremely depressed. And then we go into Eclipse, and then we get to Breaking Dawn. And Breaking Dawn to me was just such a fantastic story, and like I couldn't put it down. I mean, it's a 700 and something page book, and I like literally read it in like instantaneously. I flew through it. You know, it kind of starts out with them getting married and going on their honeymoon, which I'm not even a sap like that. Like, I don't even like romance novels. I'm not into them at all, but like for some reason Bella and Edward's story just like really gets me like right here in the feels, you know? They get married, they go on their honeymoon, she gets pregnant, she has this vampire baby, and you think she's gonna die, and she like kind of does die. And then they turn her into a vampire finally, you know, halfway through the last book, which we've been waiting for since the beginning of the first book. From that point forward, from Bella being a vampire to the end of the story, it just like, I love it. I love it so much. I can't even explain how much I love it. I have literally read this book at least 10 times. And every single time I get to the end, when Bella is finally able to let go of her shield and show Edward everything that she's been feeling since day one for him, I'm not even being hysterically crying every single time I read it and every single time I watch it in Breaking Dawn Part 2. Side note, Midnight Sun. For Twilight fans, I hope there's some Twilight fans watching, Stephanie Meyer began to write a Twilight story that was like Edward's version, so it was from Edward's perspective. Maybe a little bit more than halfway through writing the book, it got leaked onto the internet and everybody got to read it kind of unedited, and she was really upset about it, and she stopped writing the book and she didn't release it. But then she put kind of the unfinished version on her website for any Twilight fans to read if they want to, and I've read that at least 5 or 6 times. I mean, I'm like seriously saddened by the fact that they didn't release this. Stephanie Meyer, if you ever see this, I like really want you to release Midnight Sun. I mean, really, I can't even stress enough, like, I'm seriously, a piece of my heart is gone from how sad I am that you never released this. Anyways, my love for Breaking Dawn is unconditional. And I know all of you are judging me right now, and I know there's a lot of people watching this just in complete disgust of my decisions, but I don't care. Breaking Dawn is my favorite book of all time, and I will read it over and over again until the day I die, because I love Edward and Bella and their story, and I love reading about all of the vampire friends that they have with all their weird different powers, and I just love the story, and it makes me really emotional. All right, so that is the end of my top 5 favorite series list. I'm so glad that you guys were able to share this moment with me as I explain all of these series that have such special places in my heart and in my life. I appreciate all of you. I hope that you like and subscribe, and I will see you all very soon for the next episode of Fanta-Sci.